We're going to, good evening, everyone. We're going to call the Board of Selectmen's regular meeting, January 6, 2021 to order. If you'd all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America
and to the republic of America,
which stands
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. The next item is approval of minutes from December 16, 2020. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from December 16, 2020.
Thank you, Jim. Is there a second? Seconded by, is that Rick Shaw?
Yes.
Thank you. Any changes, errors, or omissions? If not, all in favor, aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. I'm going to ask your indulgence for 1 minute. We do have a telephone that our listeners can call into. I had some requests from people that don't have a computer. So you can dial in. It's 860-342-6705. And the passcode is 6705 pound or hashtag. So you may hear some beeping because it's people that are trying to join us, and I'm going to have Dave Kosminski make sure that they can hear us. Dave?
Okay. Can you hear us on the phone? They just got off.
Can you stop that beeping or no?
Yeah, I'll go in there. I just got we have 100 on, so we're at our max.
Okay, okay. So if people want to call in, they'll be able to hear the meeting, okay? We're also on Zoom A, which is accessible on our website. And you may hear some different noises here. So Selectmen, please, if you want to speak, just let me know and I should be able to hear you fine. In terms of public comment tonight, I do have some that I am going to read into the record to start with, because we have had a lot of good comments that came in on the ordinance, on the draft firearms ordinance. And I'm going to read a selection of them. They've all been shared with the Board of Selectmen. So they have seen and have been able to read all of the comments, not just the ones that will be read. For those that are with us on Zoom, we ask that your public comment, you can start now and put them in the chat at the bottom of your screen. If you hover, you'll see the ability to say, to click on chat. I'm hearing some background noise, Nick.
Yeah, well, it's flashing on and off here.
We have some open lines right now.
Dave, could you take
talk.
mic away from that? We don't need it.
Every audio.
How do they, they gotta allow people to speak somehow.
They can't hear without the mic going.
They want to ask the caller if he can hear? Can't do that. Are we okay? Okay. So we're going to do our best because we want to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to listen and also to have opportunity to have their input. So as I was saying a few minutes ago, if you have comments, we ask that you put them in the chat. And then Nick is going to read them, so the selectmen will be able to listen. But before we get to that, I need a motion to accept the agenda. Is there a motion to accept the agenda?
I'll make the motion, Ralph.
Ralph made the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Mike Pelton.
Second.
Mike Pelton made the second. Thank you, Rick. All in favor of acceptance of the agenda? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Can the selectmen hear me? Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
loud and clear.
Okay. Under communications and correspondence tonight, we do have some information from our Director of Finance. And I wanted to share that with you. You each received in your mail today, your email, the monthly report. Tom Robinson is unable to be here tonight, so he asked me to go over with you a few highlights of the report, and we will, of course, discuss it at another time as well. Excuse me. Under revenues, I'll call your attention to emergency management, line 00207. We have an increase of $66,682 in COVID relief fund money. This is from the state of Connecticut, and it is for personal protection equipment for COVID. It's for sanitation supplies, cleaning supplies, any needed equipment for the COVID situation, as well as police services. Number two, I want to call your attention to another revenue of 00314, recording fees. It is doing well this year. Our total is $33,661. And the recording fees are considered very strong at this point in the current year. We feel that's due to home sales transactions and low interest rates and high refinancing by members of our community. I just want to ask the callers that are on the telephone to please refrain from speaking because it's difficult to be able to conduct the meeting. So I appreciate your cooperation very much. Thank you. We also have additional dollars under line item 00315. That's within the miscellaneous town clerk line of $10,718. That's the total amount. This is due to online record copies, which we receive fees for, and there's a greater use of that, particularly due to the pandemic. Line item 0321, under gun permits, there's actually an increase in that line item this year, and it's due to strong numbers of residents requesting permits. The total right now is $5,040. Another item within the revenue accounts that is strong this year is police private duty. At this point, it is equal to $177,114.60. There is strong collections in this line item, mostly due to the bridge work that is being done. So the fees are coming into the town for the police private duty paid for by that state project. I want to point out that interest rates, as all of us know, are very low. And due to the low interest rates, our revenue from interest is not robust. At this point, it's $16,065. In terms of expenditures, there's a slight increase by $545 to the probate court. They needed to increase their rent this year in order to have safe distancing, social distancing for their employees. So we were we were asked to, and we have responded by paying slightly more fees to the probate court to keep them safe. Also, page 5 of your expenditures, you'll see again under private police duty, the expenditures go along with the additional revenues, the additional expenditures. Again, this is over than what we had expected because of the work that's being done on the bridge. And our finance director also points out that under miscellaneous engineering on page 7, there is an increase in that area, and that is due to some work that our engineering firm has done to prepare for another sidewalk grant. The Community Connectivity Program asked for a application, and in order to put that in, we needed to have a substantial amount, about $5,000 worth of engineering done in order to apply for that grant. And we're hopeful that we will be able to get that grant. So those are some highlights of our finance report that I wanted to give you tonight. And also under communications, I want to let our audience know, as well as our selectmen, how much I appreciate, and I know all of the selectmen do as well, the feedback that we are getting on the topic that we're going to talk about a little bit later. Is this phone bothering anyone?
No,
They can't hear it?
I can't hear it.
Okay. This phone is beeping
Can't
like
hear it.
crazy.
Yeah, you're at least louder than the phone.
All right, then I'll keep talking. Thank you.
Okay.
I want to talk a little bit about this ordinance that is a draft. It's a proposal. And I just want to give a little background to everyone about it. We have been approached since last July for a number of people. I had over a dozen, maybe 14 people contact my office, as well as come to selectmen's meetings during 2020 to complain about excessive noise from a private residence where there has been a target shooting. They sent me a tape of some of the noise, and I'm just going to play it it takes less than a minute, so you understand a little bit about the noise element of this. If you just bear with me for a minute. Well, we're not on the topic yet. Thank you for that information, but I will do that in a few minutes, okay? But we're not on that topic just yet. So I'm going to have some recommendations about that as well. So if you could all just bear with me. And there's another tape here as well. In light of the many comments that we've received, and I will read the proposal in a minute. It's not very long. I am going to be recommending, when we get to this part of the agenda, that we not proceed with this particular ordinance. I think that there are a lot of problems with this ordinance. I've had a number of phone calls from some very knowledgeable people that have pointed out some things in this draft that I think are inappropriate and we should not be proceeding with. The problem is...
Hey, Susan?
Yes.
Susan, can I interrupt you for a minute?
Yes.
I just got a text from Selectman Hernandez, Mike Hernandez. He said he got booted out of the meeting
Oh,
somehow
all right.
and can't get back in. So maybe
Okay, we'll take
our
just a
tech
minute.
person can,
Let's take a minute.
okay.
I'm assuming Ricky can't get back in because of the cap, right?
Could we wait
Well,
a
I'm
minute?
not
and
sure.
see? Nick,
It may-
Maybe, is there a,
can you get him back in?
is Dave Kuzminski there?
If you could, Rick Shaw, if you could tell
Yes.
Michael Hernandez to try to come back in now.
Okay, I'll text him.
Yeah, sorry, we've reached the cap in the meeting.
Yeah.
Mike, are you all set? Mike Hernandez?
Yes, I'm on here. I don't see me, but I'm on here, I guess.
It's almost like your
You on
iPad
an iPad?
in front of you.
Yeah, iPad.
Yeah, just try switching your camera so it's facing you.
Yeah, it's looking out your window. Looks
Oh, I
like.
gotcha. All right, there we are. Sorry, guys.
Hey, Mike.
Welcome back.
I think you may have missed a little bit of what I was saying, Mike, and I'm just want to comment that I think that the ordinance as it's written, and it's from another town, does have a lot of flaws. And it's something that I think that I'm going to recommend later on in the agenda that we not proceed with this ordinance. I think there's a lot of concerns by the neighbors about the noise that has been and has recently been complained about. But the ordinance, I don't think is appropriate. And there are some concerns that we have. There's some other issues that I'm going to be doing additional research on with our police department, as well as some other sources within the town. But at any rate, let me read it because we were requested to read it before I then look and go to the comments. Are we all set, Nick? With everything technically? Okay, so everybody can hear me okay? And I'm going to read this now. It's a draft of Chapter 12 under Offenses and Miscellaneous Provisions, Article 6, Safe Discharge of Firearms. The purpose of this article is to regulate the discharge of firearms in the town of Portland in furtherance of the protection of public peace and safety. Definitions under firearm shall have the same definition as in the Connecticut Penal Code, as the same may from time to time be amended. Peace officer shall have the same definition as in the Connecticut Penal Code, as the same may from time to time be amended. Discharge of firearms in town prohibited. Exceptions. A, by the following persons in the performance of their official or ceremonial duties. 1, peace officers, or 2, members of the armed forces of the U.S. or the state of Connecticut, or 3, authorized or licensed security personnel. Letter B, by any person acting to defend himself or herself or a third person from physical force, solely in a manner consistent with all federal, state, and local laws. Letter C, by any person responding to wildlife threatening human safety, solely in a manner consistent with all federal, state, and local laws. Letter D, on any ranges authorized in writing by the chief of the police of the town for the discharge of firearms. Such written authorization must be received on an annual basis, and all such ranges shall be inspected by the chief of police or his designee or her designee prior to any such written authorizing being provided. Letter E, by any person hunting who is legally authorized to hunt under the provisions of Connecticut general statutes, or by local ordinance and any regulations issued thereunder in such places, in such manner as is authorized under such statutes, ordinances, and regulations. Written notification requirement. Before any firearm is discharged on a person's property as authorized by section 12-81 herein, the owner of the property shall provide annual written notice to all abutting property owners, which shall state, letter A, the person's address, and B, that the person intends to hunt or to allow hunting by third parties on his or her property consistent with this article. Section 1283, penalties for offenses. Each and every discharge of firearm in violation of this article shall constitute an offense and be punishable by a fine of $250 per offense. Section 1284, state law. This article shall not supersede any provision of state law, including but not limited to any state criminal law or state law regulating hunting. Section 1285, effective date. This ordinance shall become effective on the 31st day after publication following its passage. Now, I received, as did the rest of the selectmen, a number of comments, and I'm not going to read every single one, but I did indicate to many writers that we would read some of these into the record. Some of these are not town residents, and they did not leave their address, but I think they reflect a lot of the sentiment and a lot of the comments that were received by members of our town, as well as members that may not currently be residents. This is Joseph Aiello. I oppose the ordinance that requires Portland residents to notify neighbors in writing of their intent to discharge their firearms on their own property. There's already a noise ordinance in place. There's no need for increased regulation. It's redundant, places an unreasonable burden on responsible gun owners. John Aliberti. Please don't burden firearms owners with any additional laws or regulations. Collectively, we have more than enough. Please, as service to future generations, look at all the ordinances and regulations already in force and start eliminating them as possible. Chris Batten. He had some similar comments. The next person, Charles Baugh, B-A-U-G-H. And I can leave these with the recording secretary at another time. I'll have these in writing, John. I'm writing to you as a concerned citizen and resident of Connecticut. I've heard that an ordinance is proposed to require landowners notify neighbors and town at least yearly if they plan on shooting firearms on property of their own, whether for hunting or target shooting. I feel it's unnecessary infringement on a person's Second Amendment rights and unnecessary. Your ordinance is too far-reaching. It's redundant when considering noise ordinances already in place and an infringement on Second Amendment. I respectfully demand you not propose or vote in favor of this ordinance. This next person didn't write his last name, but his first name is Dennis. If you already have a noise ordinance, why are you trying to pass another? Noise is part of life, and a few people complain, then maybe we should ban airplanes and everything that makes noise. Your agenda is gun control and nothing else. Not being infringed means just that, period. Hi, my name is Mike Dion, Dion. I represent the Portland Fish and Game Club. We understand there's a draft ordinance regarding discharge of firearms. He's asking if there'll be a Zoom conference and asked if we could be also able to have people on the telephone. So I think he may have some other comments later on. Mr. Dennis, Scott Dennis. Selectmen, I'm contacting you to voice my opposition to the proposed ordinance. However, my understanding is that much of the proposed statute is already covered extensively in the Connecticut general statutes. Additionally, the town already has extensive noise ordinance. I don't see the need for adding unnecessary and redundant statutes. Additionally, the words of the proposed statute leaves it to the subjective view of the chief of police as to what is an approved range or hunting area. I don't think I need to list out the dangers of having subjective approval process by a single person as a point of law. Not to mention the chief of police is the first select woman, and I'm sure she has enough on her plate. This kind of busy work directly leads to additional costs to the town, sure to trickle down, impact already high taxes. In short, there's no need for this proposal, which is mostly redundant. It will add extra cost and hassle, take away from the draw of our rural Connecticut town. This new ordinance is reaching too far. This is Matt Kalberer. If one is legally hunting or shooting on personal property, there's no reason that further written permission should be required. I personally have no intent on discharging a firearm on my property, but would not want my neighbors to get my permission if they felt they wanted to. This ordinance, it would inevitably criminalize a citizen who hasn't done anything wrong. Furthermore, my family moved here to Portland because of the American values it represents, which are freedom, friendliness, hard work. Let's not let the integrity of our town be infringed by unnecessary legislation. And Matt lives on Bartlett Street. This is from Pat Moynihan, lives on Indian Hill. I'm writing in opposition to the noise ordinance. Yeah, that's what he says, the proposed noise ordinance regarding firearms. There are existing laws regulating the discharge of firearms in proximity to public roads and dwellings, as well as laws outlining lawful discharge of firearms. This additional ordinance is redundant, unnecessary, and infringement on Portland citizens' private property usage. This is Luis Nesprito. It appears the genesis of the ordinance stems from a few noise complaints rather than safety or other considerations. This seems overburdensome and appears to add additional regulation to already existing noise ordinance in the town. I ask you to reconsider and to not add additional burdens on law-abiding citizens. There already exist noise ordinances in the town for which the genesis of the concern is addressed. This is from Jeff Pell. I believe property owners with the amount of proper acreage should be able to use firearms on their property without any further regulations. The next one is from John Pepper. There's already a noise ordinance in place. Don't let a noisy Karen infringe on landowners' rights. Well, at least you didn't say Susan. Sarah Staley Redder. Good morning. I am concerned for the lack of transparency with regard to this new proposed ordinance. Why is this the first we are hearing of it? Why has this not been mentioned in the River East? I will say, Sarah, that when an ordinance, and I think you're familiar with this because we worked on another ordinance together, an ordinance does not get published in the newspaper until it is been voted on by the selectmen. This ordinance tonight is only a discussion item, and it would not be published because it's only for discussion. And there will be tonight no vote. There's no vote allowed. This is not a public hearing. It's just a discussion. So I want to answer that. And then Sarah, you go on and say, is this more about the noise complaints or actual safety? There are already laws in Connecticut statutes which address unlawful discharge of firearms. Sarah goes on to say, I believe this matter requires much more discussion and transparency with citizens of Portland. Trying to slip this by during a pandemic when the citizens cannot easily voice their concerns is not appropriate or acceptable. I request Board of Selectmen consider expanding this discussion at a later date when all facts are presented to the citizens of Portland. From Jeremy S. I'm writing this short letter to voice disapproval of the proposal to create an ordinance requiring residents to notify in writing yearly intentions to discharge firearms on their property. As a hunter who has permission to private land in Portland, I believe laws such as this one, as proposed, infringes on rights of many to appease a few. Seeing that the town of Portland already has a noise ordinance in place, this proposal makes me ask a few questions. What's the purpose? Who's enforcing it? At what distance do you have to be and not have to notify neighbors? Do neighbors have the right to deny another neighbor to discharge a firearm? And so forth. There's a lot of questions that he had. From R.B. Tomiso. I'm writing in response to recent consideration to trample on the Connecticut Constitution and enact needless new firearms laws against honest Portland citizens and property owners. As a homeowner who recently considered the town to purchase a home, I think the existing ordinance list is already long enough. I'd like to request, this is from Michael Tuxbury. I'd like to request the selectmen table the ordinance. I thought property owners should be required to notify others in writing yearly of actions they wish to engage in is nonsense and infringes on liberty. Portland already has a noise ordinance in place that should be sufficient. Please don't place unnecessary and onerous ordinance on the law-abiding citizens of Portland. I also had a number of phone calls from our citizens in town. I want to thank the people who took the time not only to call, but also write. And some of their comments are very similar to the ones that I read. And I do believe that, and I said a few minutes ago, that we do need to have a review of the requirements of the state laws. I'm going to ask the police to do a review of that and present it to us. I'm also going to do a very careful review of what comes back from legal on that topic. Because if you listen to and could hear the noise that was generated on that tape that was sent to me on the phone, it is very loud and seems so very, very close to the road where the person who took that tape was simply taking a walk. It seemed extremely loud and it has not been measured. So I was going to be speaking with the selectmen a little bit later in the meeting about looking more deeply into the noise ordinance to see if that would be able to help us in light of this situation. So with that, I'm going to turn to the chat, Nick, and have you read some of our comments.
All right. So we have lots of different comments. I'm going to try to start at the top where we got some in the beginning of the meeting.
If you wait just 1 minute, I want to make sure the audio is okay. Can everyone hear Nick?
Can everyone hear me?
Yes?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead, Nick.
So first one we have Eric Handel. I'm not sure his address. It's probably in here somewhere, but he says, Resolution was not posted and I could not review it before the meeting. Please read the proposal. I object. So Susan read it. We'll keep scrolling. All right, there's a lot in this chat. Okay, we have, are we gonna allow to unmute people or do we want to keep them?
I would like
Just
to,
in the chat.
to stay with the chat to get as many comments as we can.
Okay. So I'll continue reading for now. So we have Joe Kornek from Rogers Road. He says, sorry, there's a lot of different messages. He says he would like to speak. Do you want to allow that?
Could we go to the next chat?
So we have Jessica Smith. She didn't say her address, but she says, I'm a longtime resident of Portland and would consider myself strongly pro-gun control. However, this new ordinance makes no sense to me. I live on Middle Haddam Road and some of my neighbors shoot weapons on their private property. Whether they are target shooting or hunting, they're on their private property. I don't understand how we can regulate what people are doing on their private property when they're following state and federal laws. To me, the issue is noise. If anything, a noise ordinance update may be called for rather than the proposed ordinance. We are a rural community. We will have hunters. We will have target shooting. If your neighbor is shooting or making any sort of excessive noise too early or too late, talk to them. If that doesn't resolve the issue, you can use the noise ordinance rather than adding an additional ordinance. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right, we have, I'm not sure this person's name. Their initials are just TP. They said 14 people complained in a town of over 9,000 and you want to punish everyone. Next, we have Orzie Corman and Michael Corman from 31 Michelle Drive. They said, thank you for allowing us to comment while you talk. I've lived in town for over 12 years and I am disappointed that additional gun restriction is even a topic of conversation. We have noise ordinances in addition to the purchase and discharge of firearms already being regulated. If any residents have issues, they need to resolve those within the law with the help of law enforcement if needed. I'm appalled that you would restrict every gun owner's constitutional rights because you have noise complaints in town. I have a neighbor with a four-wheeler who likes to ride up and down our road. We also have the occasional dirt bikes. Both can be noisy, but it never occurred to me that we should vote them out so nobody could own those in town. Thomas Stoto says, are the complaints about shooting coming from one parcel of property? That's a question. Let's see. We have another comment from Michael Corman. Additionally, we have small children who will be starting school in 2 years, and these are the kind of things that will affect our decision whether or not to stay in town. My husband is a decorated veteran and a certified NRA pistol safety instructor, and as you can imagine, he feels very strongly about his Second Amendment rights. Thank you. Okay. Eric Handel also says he would like it in writing, the ordinance. Joe Koronek says I will be reading several reports online and have online maps. Please let me speak during public comment and to share my screen.
Can we continue? We can go back to that, Nick?
Yeah, we can go back to that.
Okay.
Joseph Flaherty just says his address. I'm assuming he wants to speak. So if you have a comment, just write it and we can read it for you. Eric Handel again says, please do not add this ordinance. You're doing this because of me. My neighbor should say something to me. There are plenty of people shooting all the time. Eric Handel, 98 Gospel. And then he says the noise ordinance doesn't stop chainsaws at 5:30 a.m. We have Mike Dion, some comments from the Portland Fish and Game Club. And he says, section 12-82, written notification requirement. He says, with regards to section 1282, what is the intent of this provision? How does it solve your current problem? It places undue burden on the game club property owners. Club property abuts many property owners. Today, by law, any property adjacent to club property requires notification that hunting occurs adjacent to that property to potential buyers at time of sale. Club property is clearly posted today, thereby providing notification. What is the problem or issue that Article VI is meant to solve? If early shooting noise, this will not help as waterfowl hunting is allowed from 30 minutes prior to sunrise to sunset by state regulations. Pheasant hunting is allowed between 30 minutes prior to sunrise until 30 minutes after sunset. Our club starts pheasant hunting at 8:30 a.m. on Saturdays, which is more restrictive than the state regulations. Our turkey shoots don't start until 11. Portland Farmer Fish and Game has been in existence for more than 70 years. We follow all state hunting regulations. Our self-imposed regulations are more restrictive than the state. Saturday AM starting at 8:30 for pheasant. PF&G sponsors 4 to 5 turkey shoots to win a turkey, have always been open to the public, have become a fun family activity in town, and can help teach new shooters firearm safety. Burdening the police with the responsibility of enforcing unnecessary rules will detract from their ability to do their job in enforcing real rules where people are in danger if not followed. If Article VI is not going to solve the problem or issue it was intended for, why have it? I'm not sure who this person is. They said you didn't read all of my comment. I'll see if I can find that again. Josh O'Leary just said his address, Jobsgate 1. If you have a message, just please type it. We have Dave Blaze. Sorry if I mispronounced your last name. This ordinance is covered already with the state and within the town. There are other things. We have Christopher Battelle. Good afternoon. I have recently heard of the proposal to de facto ban the discharge of firearm on a private property within the town of Portland. As I have researched, there currently is a noise ordinance already in place in the town of Portland. The town has no right to further demand residents to have to forcibly notify neighbors of their choice to lawfully hunt on their own private land. Portland has been a nice, quaint place to live and a thriving community for generations. Proposals like these, although appearing to be well-intentioned to some, just create a more hostile and restrictive place to live for the majority of citizens. Furthermore, proposals like these are rarely able to be properly enforced. The result will be the failed attempt to please a couple of residents, but the successful attempt to anger much of the local electorate. I hope you will reject this terrible proposal. Thank you, Christopher Battelle. We have Jeff Kobe-Lars, Marlboro Turnpike. He didn't have a message, just please type it in the chat. Joe Kornick again says, my arguments highlight topics of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, principles of gun safety, other town/state restrictions on shooting, CT legislative branch view, and cost to the common family, as well as maps and geography. Josh Leary says, board, there are many people in this town who grew up shooting with family, many generations, and is one of the draws to this rural town. I know many people who own property that have shooting ranges, and every single one has always done so safely. I always encourage the entire board to review state laws already in place. I look forward to speaking with you further about this topic. We have Dave Blaze. I think he was continuing what he was saying earlier. We have someone at 98 Gospel Lane. Has the town considered the cost of a legal battle over the Second Amendment? Josh Leary says, I think he was continuing on his last message. If the landowners do so safely and within the law, that should be enough. After speaking with many people who are looking to purchase homes in this town in the next 5 years, this may deter many home purchasers in the town. Jeff Kobe-Lars, Old Marlboro Turnpike. This sounds like a neighbor dispute. Please do not penalize the rest of us in town. This ordinance was designed for a city environment. Andy Selinsky, 6 Brooks Lane. This quickly went from noise complaints to gun control. This is not appropriate and should not go forward. That's all we have right now.
Okay. All right. There is public comment again after status and committee reports, so we will open it up again. And if you have comments, please continue to put them in the chat, and we will be able to address more public comment later in the meeting. The next item under old business is racial equity, diversity, inclusion. I don't know if April Graves is on our list.
Oh, she is.
Yeah.
Hi, April. She is here, Nick.
Oh,
Thanks, Nick. I just want to say that Nick's doing a great job tonight. It's not easy to, as it's been pointed out by a lot of our public commenters, this is a very difficult way to conduct the meeting, particularly when you want to have everybody involved. So my apologies if you weren't able to get a seat tonight, but certainly maybe as some people may come off, you can get back on, but this topic is not by any means ended, and we will not be taking any votes tonight at all, for sure. So we'll move to you, April.
Hi, everyone. So next Tuesday, the Task Force on Solidarity will be meeting at 7 p.m. on Zoom B. And this is the meeting that we will be having our training with Elizabeth McGee from Sustainable CT. We invite all of the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Ed members to come join us for that training. And I will be sending out an email to everybody with the link to the training that she's sending us to watch beforehand so that we can have questions for her during that meeting. And then after that, we will be developing our survey questions that will be going out to the town. And it's a town-wide survey, and that should be going out the week of January 17th.
Thank you very much, April.
Thank you.
Good to see you. Thank you for all your work and your committee's work as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item is Reentry Committee, discussion of services and programs offered during COVID-19. And Janet Nocheck had indicated she may be able to attend tonight. So I'm going to ask Nick if you can allow her. Thanks, Nick. Good evening, Janet.
Good evening. There we go. I hit the button too hard. Yes, hello all. So here we are. I just wanted to say, you know, we had talked a few weeks back about the library feeling we needed to close down to people coming in and freely browsing. And we did that as the selectmen approved and suggested doing that. And we're still working on some plans. We would like to allow people to come in a limited way, have a few people in the building at a time. But with the holidays and things going on, we had one person had to quarantine a few days and things like that. We haven't been able to get enough staff together to do a thorough planning on that. So I don't have it yet, but I'll come back to that as soon as possible, which should be very soon. I was on a meeting this morning as far as the current status with that included Russ Melmed, and he is the director of the Chatham Health District there, public health director. He was mentioning that we have a high rate of transmission right now in the area, and that he anticipates it increasing right now because we're still seeing the post New Year's kind of situation. So right now, I think we should keep kind of playing it very carefully and not really making a major change. We are doing what we can to let people get books and know that we will get the materials to them. We have what we call curbside pickup, as you know. So if they request something by the phone or through the computer, and we'll bring it out to them when it's ready. We have to arrange to have them pick it up at certain times. So we'd like to do something similar. We could arrange to let people in if they need to browse for, you know, something. So we had one lady came up to the door with her walker just right after we had closed down, and really the word didn't get out. That was hard for people to know because we kind of closed quickly because we needed to, we thought. And she said, I don't want to browse, I just want to get a book. So, you know, we let her in to get a book, but we can't really let, you know, a lot of people in to be moving around because we have trouble just trying to enforce, excuse me, enforce the kind of mask wearing. And a lot of people might be gathering there, which was starting to happen. So in essence, we're doing pretty good right now. We're letting people in to make copies. We'll do copies and faxes for them if they wish. We're allowing them to get materials. And if they have a computer need, we're trying to work that out. If someone needs to check their email and, you know, they can't get on it anywhere else or something like that, they should get in touch with us and we'll work something out. We're going to help out, I know, with some of the volunteers at the food bank as things come down the line to set up vaccinations. All these things are done on computer programs now, if you want to sign up for a vaccination when your turn is coming up. You know, we'll certainly, you know, be glad to help people with anything like that. We're planning to work out, you know, some good routines. So I would say we should continue the way we are right now, if you agree, and maybe look at it in early February or something, and look again at where we're at that point.
Thank you, Janet. I'll open it up to the selectmen for questions. I do want to point out in terms of vaccinations, as Janet mentioned, our first responders, many of our firefighters and our police officers have been put in by our fire chief, Bob Shea, into what's called the VAMS statewide data system. And many of them have been successful in either getting their vaccination scheduled or having actually gotten their vaccination. I want to say a special thank you to Community Health Center. Not only have they been doing and continue to do a great job with testing for COVID-19, they also are doing a fabulous job in getting many of our first responders inoculated and getting the vaccination in their arm. I'm very grateful to them for the work that they're doing. As far as that is 1A, the category that the state has identified. 1B has not been clearly articulated as to whom would be eligible. We know there has been a discussion of what they would be. That came out this week from the governor's office. But specifically, the town has not been given the go-ahead to start putting up the 1B names into the VAMS system. So when we are at that point, I'll certainly let the selectmen know that. But at this point, we're concentrating as a state of Connecticut on 1A, which are the hospitals and the nursing homes and first responders. And I want to thank Bob Shea for the much work that he has done in making certain that everyone's name is put into the system. And he's doing a great job for us. And I thank you, Bob. Any questions? Okay, thanks a lot,
No,
Janet.
I would, Susan,
Yes,
I
Rick.
just want to say, Janet, I appreciate hearing that you have accommodated some people on occasion. I think that's good. That if somebody needs something or to get at a computer. So yes, keep up the good work.
Oh, thank you. And I should mention too that the governor gave us a nice gift to try to increase our capacity and help us safely reopen. And one of the things we got from that, with the help of Dave Kosminski, was to increase our wireless access. It's better. So if people have tried to use it on occasion from our driveway, for instance, from the parking lot, you know, we're not open, or even when we are, it's not busy there now, they can come up and, you know, get on their own through their laptop or phone or whatever, iPad, they can get onto the wireless from there. And the password is, it's no secret, Book World, capital B and capital W, all one word. So if you know people just looking for a place to get connected, you should give it a try and let us know if there's any issues, but we think it's working really well now.
Thanks, Janet. Thanks, Rick.
Welcome. Thanks.
The next item is letter C, appointments and reappointments to boards and commissions. Do we have any appointments tonight?
Yeah, we have a couple tonight. I'm going to do one of them. I'd like to make motion that we reappoint Susan M. Malecki to the Housing Authority.
I'll second it. It's Ralph.
Seconded by Ralph. Thanks, Ralph. All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Do we have any other appointments tonight?
Yes, Susan. I have J.E. Swanson to continue his term on the Ethics Commission.
Is there a second?
I will second that.
Seconded by Jim. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any
Aye.
abstentions? Motion carries. Are there any other appointments to boards or commissions tonight?
Not this time.
Thank you very much. New business, letter A, discussion of the draft ordinance. So I'll open it up to the selectmen.
I would like to start.
Go ahead, Ralph.
I got a few comments. First of all, I guess I just wanted to cover things with regards to how the ordinance comes about and everything. I think my frustration is that there was an implication that we were trying to get this in and sneak it in. I mean, it's clear that there's a process to all of this. And we've always talked about, we're really, you know, what's important, I know, is open communications, and that's critical. And I've always, when any of the things I've done in town, I've always said that I am open to talk to anyone at any time about anything having to do with something I'm doing for the town. And I think, I feel that I haven't directly talked to every selectman, but I'm sure they're all on the same page with regards to that. That being said, you know, I think that the key things that I want to say about the ordinance itself is that, you know, ultimately what we're trying to do is look at trying to achieve providing safety to our community and making sure that the community is not impacted by irregular, abnormal noise. And I certainly know that if I think that we can find that the state regulations on it and our noise ordinance achieve those goals, then I don't see we have to expand it. But I would like us to look at that because it's not like something I think about or look at every day in terms of looking at the gun ordinance. I don't. So obviously there's, you know, we'll do our homework, which we always do, to make sure that we make informed decisions. So I'm sure we'll take a look at that to have a better understanding. The only thing a couple other things I'd like to say is, you know, we're talking about, and I understand people say about what I do on my own property, but bullets can leave your own property. So I understand everyone could be very mindful of trying to be good at what they do in terms of making sure that they don't disturb their neighbors. But you know, if it's done incorrectly, you can have bullets that will indeed leave your property. So that could have a direct impact to others. So I don't think it's, you know, do whatever you want on your property. I think it's just a matter of looking at it. The other thing that obviously there was lots of comments made too about rights and stuff like that, and I understand that. But when you look at it, you know, it's rights for both sides. So I know obviously there's so much discussion about whether we protecting the rights of the people that aren't gun owners. But on the same side, with regards to gun owners, if the regulation says certain specifications of what you should be doing, unless those regulations that the state has indicates who is the person or who in the town actually goes out and makes sure that that's okay, the gun owner is also exposed because it could be arbitrarily done in the town, and maybe the perception could be that something would be done where they wouldn't get a fair shake. So I think it works both ways. I mean, the gun owners have to understand that, you know, accidents happen, and what you're trying to avoid is an accident happening that has an undue impact on someone else in town. And certainly we're just trying to make sure everyone's rights are protected, certainly including the gun owners as well. So I just wanted to make those comments.
Thank you, Ralph. Anyone else?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm you know, very satisfied in terms of taking a good hard look at the existing laws that are in place and looking at our existing noise ordinance and see how those work together. I mean, I think what we've got here in terms of a complaint is a fairly narrow issue, right? Most folks that are shooting firearms, most folks that hunt, very careful to follow the laws, very careful, and a lot of them are very well, and most of them are very well trained and very comfortable and adept at what they're doing. I think what we're talking about here is a relatively narrow problem. Some of the complaint had to do with, you know, not only the very loud noises, which are, that proximity will result in, but also, if you're sitting, for example, in your house, which I believe was one of the complaints, and with somebody shooting next door and it's going on for 6 to 8 hours, that can also impede. And I think that's part of that, that sort of that narrow set of what you're trying to solve. And if there's a way to do that with a noise ordinance, I think that's good. If it's a way to do it with a neighbor to neighbor conversation, but that's not always, unfortunately, successful, as a lot of us know. There were definitely things in here that I look at. I'll say that I had already kind of knocked off things like, I agree with the written notification. In this type of, I don't know why we would really need that if folks are doing something, we don't require that for other legal activities on somebody's property on an annual basis. Other little things that I had seen in here is that, for example, a person responding to wildlife threatening human, I think you'd want to include things like, or livestock. We do have folks that have livestock in town, protecting other property in that way. And I think that really our focus when we've had, we had a brief discussion on this in December, our biggest concern is making sure that where this is taking place is on parcels that are properly sized, making sure there's proper distance from dwellings, things of that nature. And I think that's probably still got to be the focus long-term of any kind of enforcement, whether it's through existing laws or noise ordinance procedures.
Susan, this is Lou speaking.
Hi, Lou, go ahead.
I want to just, compliment the people that have called in and people that have emailed. Our democratic process, it works and it continues to work, and it works in Portland very well. What I've heard from people saying that they're not so hep on a gun ordinance, but maybe enforce better, maybe a better enforcement of our noise ordinance. And maybe that needs to be done, especially in cases where noises may be too loud and too frequent, especially a gun range that may be in an area near other homes. I had a wonderful conversation with a lifelong member of town, John Anderson, 88 years old. He says he doesn't shoot, doesn't have a gun, but he was concerned about the fact that there may be an ordinance that may be passed. He said, be careful when you craft a gun ordinance. And I think that's important for all of us to think about, is that if in fact we're going to do something like a gun ordinance, we have to be very careful and make sure we do it correctly. His focus is similar to all the other people that I've mentioned, and these are some of the suggestions that people have made. And I think that one of the great things of our town is that we probably had 50 people that have weighed in on why they think the noise ordinance is the key issue here, and maybe that's what we need to refine and make it more enforceable. So that was one of the underlying comments that I received. We shouldn't make this a hardship on hunters. We should take a look and make sure that existing ranges can still be continued to be ranges. I mean, people that have used these ranges for many years, they're safe. They've operated safely, from what I understand, and that could continue. And I think that's a good idea too. John also mentioned something about farmers. I mean, we do have quite a few farmers in town, and there are predators that attack their produce and their fruit. They have a right to make sure that their livelihood is not diminished because of animals or predators that are attacking their produce, their profit too. So some of the things that I was looking at, and maybe these are just some questions that we need to look at down the road, is that an assault weapon, there are some state regulations on that. And I know that as of, I think, maybe 2010, they were banned in Connecticut. And if that's the case, when was this assault rifle registered? Is it registered? And is it legally registered? So that's a question. Could neighbors agree and on a time and a time frame. And I know that these two neighbors probably tried that, and from what I understand, that hasn't worked. The last thing I would mention is that maybe this person who has the gun, because he knows that there is a concern, could this person join the Portland Fish and Game Club and use their range? Now, I'm not sure if they allow assault rifles in their range, but if that was allowed, maybe there could be some type of membership where that person could join the Portland Fish and Game Club or hunting club. And so those are some of the things that I gleaned from it. I'm glad that I think that you've taken the leadership role in saying we're going to hold off on the gun ordinance. I can support that. And that maybe we need to see how we can enforce the noise ordinance in a better way. Thank you.
Thank you, Lou.
All right, Susan, I guess I'll speak next.
Okay, Michael?
Okay, after receiving many telephone calls, emails, text messages, and so on, I mean, there's definitely an overwhelming opposition to a gun ordinance. And like everyone here has been saying, that everyone feels that it may be more of a noise ordinance problem here that we need to be concentrating on. But I'm not gonna get into gun owners or property owners or anything like that. I'm just gonna let everybody know in the town of Portland that we as the Board of Selectmen are definitely gonna put in our due diligence, our research. We're gonna look at the state, federal laws. We're gonna talk to our Portland law enforcement. We're gonna talk this out. We're gonna come up with a great solution that everybody can be happy with. We know that nobody's going to be 100% happy, but I just want to let everybody know in Portland that we as the selectmen are going to work together on this. There is no pro against anything like that. We're just going to work together, and we're going to do what's best for the town of Portland. And just give us our time. We will revisit this at another meeting. We will let you guys speak again. And I just can't say it enough to just let us work it out as a board. Please keep emailing us, texting us, phone calls with your concerns. I'd love to hear everybody's side and go forward with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Susan, this is Mike. I'll weigh in now as well. It's been a busy last day or two with all the emails and the conversations. I think we've all had them with friends and folks that have reached out to us. And the theme that I've heard from just about everyone beside be careful or don't do anything that goes against what our rights are. I don't want to get into that as well, but two people both mentioned earlier today that sometimes there's unintended consequences of trying to do some good intentions. You're trying to do something to solve a problem. And if you're going to write an ordinance for it or a law or whatever, there could be unintended consequences. So we do need to think long and hard. We do need to see what should or shouldn't be done. And if it's focused on the noise or the noise ordinance, let's look at that. But the one thing that makes me feel good about this is we've gotten a lot of feedback, as Mike said. People are engaged, which is fantastic. Tonight I've had a couple of people text me already that they've tried to log on and we're maxed at 100. So when's the last time we had that happen? A year ago? It's good to see people engaged and involved, and it makes me feel good that the team we have has worked very well, and I think we'll continue to do that. So as Mike said and everybody else said, I'm going to echo all that, but keep it coming in. We're trying to do the best we can. We're trying to solve the problem, and this is a great town. We don't want to overburden anybody with undue regulations. We just want to make it work for everybody as best we can. So
Thank you.
Susan, everybody else spoke well and kind of summed up my feelings. I'll just say I was blown away by the response, which was I'm happy to see between phone calls and emails and all the people weighing in. It's great to hear from our constituents. I kind of felt all along that this was, I'm glad we're having the discussion and not really rapidly trying to put another ordinance in place. Because I'm generally for less government, not more. And I do think what the other selectmen have said is, we're kind of reacting to a few, kind of two areas in town where we've gotten complaints. I think we should talk to, our police captain and see what we can do about enforcing the noise ordinance. Also, I'm personally not up on even what the state gun laws are. So I think, if I'd like to take a little bit more look at what's already on the books, before we jump ahead and try to create another ordinance. And I appreciate that you decided to kind of not make this put this, just not push it aside, but not kind of, force the issue tonight. I think we're getting good input from everybody. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'll add that a lot of our commenters, both on the telephone and in written comments, I don't know that you can create a good neighbor policy, respect policy, but certainly 90% of the time people respect one another, and we don't have these kinds of problems. And the reason this has come to us is that there's been some attempts, both by town personnel and I believe by folks in the area, of trying to come to a reasonable solution. Unfortunately, I'm hearing that it hadn't happened, but that's not to say that it can't. And I, as the other 6 selectmen pointed out tonight, I truly am encouraged and very proud of our town that people have spoken so articulately and really given good thought to the way we want our town to be run. We want the high quality of life and the freedoms that we all enjoy here. And it is a privilege. It's my privilege, and I think it's everyone's privilege to live in the town. And we live here because we do love our town and the way that it is run. So again, another thank you to all of us that are participating. And as many of you pointed out, we will get the best solution. It may not please everyone, but we're going to try, because we all treasure our living in this great town of Portland. So is there any other comments on this? I will continue to have this as a follow-up item, and I will do my best to do research. And I know Michael Hernandez and Ron Millardo are going to be helping with that. And we'll be bringing it back as more information becomes available. But in the meantime, if people that live in the town and neighbors can be kind and considerate to one another, a lot of these problems would not be occurring. So thank you, everybody, for your good concerns and your neighborliness. The next item is, I wrote down 2021 year ahead, some of our projects and goals. I know I'm not going to get into too much detail on this. We certainly are aware of many of the things that we're working on, from water and sewer to we're going to be putting our budget together very soon. We mentioned a little while ago that we have a grant to extend and continue with our sidewalk improvement program. There are other areas that we're looking at, from riverfront access to being able to get the cleanup at our brownfield on the river. There, at last report, I believe 2 of the 5 above ground storage tanks at 248 Brownstone have been removed by Connecticut Scrap Metal out of North Franklin. They're doing a really good job, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the river from that address once again. So we'll be continuing with that. The Riverfront Park in general, the Labyrinth, has really begun to blossom, and I know there'll be more work done on that. The Airline Trail, we say kudos to 2 Eagle Scouts, Ian Wallace and Mr. Coe. I think it's Justin Coe, and the work that they have done. There's a beautiful new flagpole, a beautiful newly built picnic table, and then 2 benches that have wonderful canopies over them that will allow not only for a restful place for hikers, but also a place to be protected out of the elements, whether it's the sun or it is rain or inclement weather. There's lots of other projects that we're working on. I know there's some action within our business community, and we will at some meeting in the future have Mary Dickerson come and speak to some of those projects. And I think we had some fun this holiday season in spite of COVID. I had some really good responses from our community on the lighted trail. And I want to thank all of our community members who lit up their houses and put a little bit of lightness in this darkness that we've had over the past couple of months. They did a fabulous job. I'm not sure the winner has been announced, but I believe they'll be working on that. And we're also going to be doing a restaurant promotion program during the month of January to try to get some more action for our businesses in town. I visit our new park almost every day, and many of my friends and folks that I don't know are also visiting the new Route 17 recreational complex. It's a wonderful place for us to be during COVID, and also all ages and abilities are there. It's really a great investment that we've made. We did have, I got to say this about our public works crew. There was a water valve replacement job that needed to be done a little sooner than we had anticipated. And Mike Lestrina and the entire crew did a great job in making sure that they worked through the night and got that project done. And they got it done very well. And I'm very proud of the work that they're doing. I don't know if there's anything that any of the selectmen want to add. That's just a brief overview on some of the things that we are working on, in addition to the work of tonight's session.
The only thing I would add is, and I was going to add it later, but it's topical now, is just, yeah, a thank you to the crew on that break. It was during a period, it was very, very cold out. There was a break. They went out there, they were doing work. It ended up requiring some valve replacements. 21 hours. I drove by while they were working, and it's cold, wet work, and nice job. They did a nice job out there.
I want to also add that we are going to be putting solar panels on the Brownstone Intermediate School. I'm very close to signing the contract that you have allowed me to sign. And we also are involved with some work that may be done on our communications tower, an additional customer up there that will enhance our income from the lease of that tower. And I have not gotten yet the appraisal for the old police department. We used to be Company 2 on Main Street. We talked about the sale of that property, so I will let the selectmen know about that when we get that information. Okay, there is no refund of excess payments tonight. So we'll move on to status and committee reports. And I know Jim had indicated he had a couple of brief reports for us tonight.
Yeah, I think the first one, and just kind of finish up the Water and Sewer Subcommittee met last night. We were asked to take a look at a request regarding a billing, and we did that. We had a good discussion. We had very good participation with the property owner. After looking at everything, our recommendation at this point back to the board would be that we do not need to take further action at this time. So that would be the recommendation, is that we don't actually take further action on that issue at this point. The other thing I wanted to go through was the Board of Education meeting last night. They had a very long meeting last night, so I would give them some props for. I think it was a long, tough night. But basically, the superintendent had made a proposal looking at reopening, because everyone's working and trying to see how we can get the schools reopened as quickly as possible. The recommendation was going to be to open up full opening for K through 6 this coming Monday, and hybrid for basically the middle school and high school. That recommendation was not accepted, and part of that was just some concerns from a staffing perspective. They are now working on a new plan for that. There was some discussion in terms of sort of an alternate or sort of a compromise schedule, and some additional information was requested regarding the current infection rates and to see how we're doing in COVID and how the state is doing. They were getting that information today. There is a special meeting scheduled, I believe, for 5 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, where they're going to be further discussing that reopening. The other item of note is they have begun work on their budget, and the initial request from the superintendent, the initial, I shouldn't say even request, but the initial number that was submitted to the board for them to start looking at budgets and where they can make adjustments from the superintendent was 3.97%. So just want to give everybody kind of an update on that. And I think that's it. The only other item I was going to say is I did also want to congratulate the Parks and Rec. Good program that was put in place for the lights. We went on around with my family, again, just trying to get out of the house around the holidays, and we kind of took the tour a couple of times, and a lot of folks in Portland that really outdid themselves. There were a few pretty spectacular displays out there, so that was an enjoyable, uplifting time during the holidays.
Thank you, Jim. Any other reports tonight?
Hey, this is Ralph. I would just add to Jim's in terms of talking about the Board of Education. Yeah, so the school reopening committee that I'm on, we met this morning, and we're going to again meet tomorrow morning after the numbers have come out to discuss more about what the next strategy would be. You know, the challenge of it all is the numbers are going in the wrong direction right now. And so it's just a matter of trying to get a sense of the trends. That's really what it comes down to. It's the same thing I see where I'm working, and the same thing here as you try to understand the trends and where things are going. So I'm sure we'll have a healthy discussion in the morning, and the superintendent will present something at 5 o'clock tomorrow to decide the next course of action.
Thank you, Ralph. Any other reports tonight? If not, we'll move on to public comment. Nick?
All right, we have a lot of comments that I've collected, so I'm just going to start from the first that I've received, and I'm just going to read them all. If you have any you want to send during this time, just send them in the chat, and I'll read them once I get through all the ones I have already. So we'll start out. We have, or can everyone hear me? Let me just make sure that.
Can everyone hear Nick? Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes.
So we have Melissa Jerrier Sataj. Sorry if I messed up the name. Collins Hill Road. She says, this is an overreach by the town to devise a new ordinance because existing ordinances are challenging to enforce. Challenging to enforce is not an excuse for not enforcing the existing noise ordinance. See Article 3, Sections 12 through 49, and gun rules regarding private, on personal property, or public ranges that are already in place. Challenging to enforce is the same excuse used for not enforcing or enforcing ad hoc, which has opened the door to discrimination and trampling on the rights of many on the whims of some. This door must be closed. Portland has ordinances on the books, good ones. The problem isn't with the ordinance. It's the lack of leadership and consistency in the enforcement. Instead of applying ordinances ad hoc, let's try something new. Let's try enforcing what we have, measuring success/failure, identifying why the ordinance failed, then making a change. Do your jobs and stop coming up with band-aids to cover the lack of consistent enforcement. All right, we have Eric Handel, 98 Gospel. He says he wants to speak, but he also has a written message. He says, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the town of Portland for all it has done for me for the 21 years I've lived here. Particularly, I would like to thank Ms. Bransfield and the Wetlands Department for all of their help with the pollution reaching Hedstrom's ponds from the high school. In addition, I appreciate Rick Kelsey's efforts to help by boring a drain from the sediment basin at the high school to discharge into the woods where it washes dirt into the ponds. I would also like to thank the town for getting involved in my child custody battle. Good job assaulting me in front of my 6-year-old son on my front porch to silence my complaints about the destruction of the wetlands. Of course, we all love the taxes in Portland. It was great how all of my neighbors had to drop in taxes last time around, and I got an increase. My house is unfinished and has a dirt driveway. All of the discounted properties were complete. A couple of years ago, Ms. Bransfield approved milling rumble strips down the double yellow line of Gospel Lane near Route 66, where I live. Cars run over these and make noise almost constantly. I see there are none further up the road where there are expensive homes and much more traffic. This is noisy, annoying, and almost as loud and far more common than gunshots. Thanks. In addition, I would like to give my thanks to Ms. Bransfield for a total negligence of my officer complaints. She says, I can't do anything. I'm not a certified police officer. This is more than hollow, as the elected chief of police absolutely has control of the officers under her command. On August 8th of 2021, I'm not sure if that's correct, maybe 2020, there was a gasoline fire near my house, and when I asked the firefighter his name, he called the police, who arrived 15 minutes later, speeding insanely around the bend on William Street over 60 miles per hour, nearly causing a collision. He could not, quote, articulate any reasonable suspicion that a crime had been committed or what crime he was investigating. This was an illegal detainment. What do you bet no one shows interest in the officer's name, question mark? Again, no hint of a crime, and I am surrounded by armed men calling me a jerk. Not for nothing. In Portland, we use water to put out gasoline and electrical fires, and not the correctly rated fire extinguisher. In closing, it was great to hear the amplified gunshot sounds Ms. Bransfield played that are heard all around Portland. This is exaggerated and clear bias. The complaint is clearly about my friends and me. We occasionally do target practice in the middle of the day. There's nothing particularly loud about any one type of gun, and Susan is, quote, playing it up to favor her friends and continue to silence my legitimate complaints about the wetlands. You got my son, Susan. What else do you want? I do not love the way this town is run. We have Joe Kornick, Rogers Road. He would also like to speak, but he also has some written messages here. He says, I think these are just references to different articles and documents. He says, from the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 17, everyone has the right to own property alone as well in association with others. And 2, no one shall be arbitrarily deprived of his own property. Article 3, everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security of person. Article 12, no one shall be subjected to arbitrary interference with his privacy, family, home, or correspondence, nor to attacks upon his honor and reputation. He says, everyone has the right to the protection of the law against such interferences or attacks. By being able to shoot on one's own property is building confidence, recognition, familiarity, and security with the firearm. One cannot expect to adequately use a firearm without proper training. The 5 basic principles of gun safety: 1, treat every gun as if it were loaded. 2, always point your gun in a safe direction. 3, never point your gun at anything you don't intend to shoot. 4, keep your finger off the trigger until ready to shoot. 5, be sure of your target and what's beyond. If these were willingly ignored, they would follow under unlawful discharge of a weapon, proving, quote, negligent. Illegal use or reckless discharge, but there are proper manners, such as amount of property, buffer zones, 500 feet from any building, time of day, self-defense, etc. To allow these happenings to occur besides current CT deep laws and regulations, citing Pennsylvania law Title 34 of the Game Code, 34 PA.CS 2507, restrictions on shooting. Shooting at a properly constructed target or mark or a dead tree protected by a natural or artificial barrier so that the ball, bullet, or arrow cannot travel more than 15 yards beyond the target aimed at. After making due allowance for deflection in any direction, not to exceed an angle of 45 degrees. Target shooting shall be only lawful when it's done, one, upon property owned by the shooter or by a guest of the property owner. And he says, from the CT General Assembly of Legislative Research Report 2013 R0475 revised, titled Discharging Firearms on Owned Property and a Municipality's Authority to Regulate, by Associate Legislative Attorney Duke Chen states, there is no state law that specifically prohibits a homeowner from discharging firearms on his or her own property, but other state laws still apply. For example, if a homeowner fired his or her firearm in a manner likely to cause bodily injury or death to a person or domestic animal, or wanton destruction of property, he or she could be guilty of unlawfully discharge of a firearm. Additionally, a homeowner could be guilty of reckless endangerment if he or she recklessly endangers in conduct that creates a risk of physical injury to another. It says cost to shoot, Blue Trails range $34 per person, family of 4, 1 outing, approximately 2 hours, $136. To go 3 times, 6 hours, proficiency, $408. In order for suitable proficiency, more time is needed. Hoffman's, $30 per hour, 2 hours apiece at Hoffman's times 4 persons, $240. 6 hour proficiency, $720. If you could shoot within the confines of the regulations, it will not be an economic burden on the Portland family. Portland is in a, quote, crescent moon shape of land that bounces noise around town. At this point, I would like to show the topographic maps and the like. If the notion of noise pollution is distracting, then as a town, it should cancel truck pulls, fireworks, parades, police, and fire sirens for the noises being distracting. Even generator use during storm/power outages, despite generators humming for several hours on end. Who complained then, ? To keep a family safe, secure, and be self-sufficient, who complained then? And I think he has some different documents, but I don't think you can show them at this time. May send you an email, something like that.
Yeah.
All right, we have Andrew Donahue, 52 Fairview Street. He says he's a Portland resident currently stationed at Fort Riley, Kansas. As a sportsman, I appreciate the town of Portland's public spaces. I utilize the Reservoir Trail and the Airline Trail, both of which are in audio proximity to the private shooting ranges mentioned in the complaint sent to the Board of Selectmen. I also hunt on state-owned land in Portland and, with landowner permission, engage in target practice at the previously mentioned range near the Airline Trail. I feel that as a community, we need to respect all of the outdoor activities available to residents of this town, even if some may be noisy. I also believe that residents need to take ownership of this community, so instead of immediately calling the police or complaining to the Board of Selectmen, neighborhood disputes should be handled between neighbors. Finally, I believe that we must respect and protect the rights of property owners. For these reasons, I urge the members of this board to reconsider this proposal. We have Carrie Dickinson, Jobs Pond Road. How does this prevent a bullet from leaving our own property, ? We have the DeFrancescos. Being Portland born and raised, we purchased 13 acres on Jobs Pond Road and pay a significant amount of taxes for our right to use this property as we would like. Hunting and target shooting are rights we enjoy, and we follow all local and state laws and guidelines. This does sound more like a few complaints to overreach and govern the many. We have Wendy from Hall Hill Road. She says, we are considerate of our neighbors. We have 30 acres of property. We have a safe place for target practice. Target practice is only about 12 times for the year, about 1 hour each time, and it's usually after 9:30 a.m., usually on the weekend. Neighbors have called the police to investigate, and that is fine. They are concerned, and that is understandable. We have recently called dispatch ahead of time to give the police a heads up to the target practice so they know how to respond to the call. We also have one friend, a town resident, that we allow to hunt on our property. Every year he obtains our written permission to hunt and submits it to the town. He follows the strict state statutes to hunt. All right. And also it's usually after 9:30 a.m., usually on the weekend. Chris D. We're in complaints about safety or noise. What about a crossbow that makes no sound? That can be a safety issue. We are not proposing an ordinance for that. Will there be a fee for registering? What about an appeals process for denial based on an arbitrary means of deciding if a property is compliant? How does notification to neighbors need to be made certified letter to ensure all neighbors receive this? What if people don't know all their neighbors? I'm not a gun owner, gun owner, but I feel we have a way to handle this with a noise ordinance. We have Josh Leary. If I may add to Lou's comments, quote, assault weapons, as stated, have nothing to do with this. Quote, assault weapons are typically smaller caliber than many common hunting rifles. Bringing up assault weapons is completely irrelevant to this conversation. We have Sarah Sterry Rudder. Thank you to our first Selectwoman and Board of Selectmen for your time and patience in addressing our concerns in such a meaningful way and for continued service to the citizens of Portland. I'm just looking through the chat to see if we have any more.
Thank you, Nick.
Wendy notes it's all about communication with the neighbors. We have Nick LaRosa. He says, I grew up and continue to live in this town and strongly oppose this proposed noise ordinance. The discharge of any firearm on private land, whether it be for hunting or sport, should not be infringed upon by this town. The town residents should enjoy the sound of American freedom. Currently, a neighbor down the street from me shoots on his private property. It's not like they shoot all day or all the time or a nuisance at all. The price of ammunition has gone up so much during this pandemic that people aren't even shooting as much anymore. It costs so much. This is a far reach for this town to try and regulate the discharge of firearms on private land. Hunting and target shooting are part of the fabric of this amazing rural town. I ask the board to kill this proposed ordinance and let owners do what they may on their private land. Thank you, Nicholas LaRosa, Burr Street, Portland. Carrie Dickinson says, my question was directed at Ralph. He mentioned that he would be open to investigate and promote safety, quote, prevent a bullet from leaving a property, quote. This ordinance would not stop that. She talked earlier about her question that said, how does this prevent a bullet from leaving your own property? 98 Gospel, I think that's Eric. He mentions, I would be glad to not shoot if my neighbor asked occasionally. And that's all we have right now.
Thank you very much, Nick. And thank you everyone for your comments. Next item 11 is the Board of Selectmen informal discussion.
So let me just tell a quick story. So almost 30 years ago, we moved into town and I grew up in West Haven, a bigger town, a bigger city, more of a city. We move in, first weekend we're sleeping, and about, I don't know, it wasn't extremely early, but it was early on a Saturday or Sunday morning. All of a sudden we hear bang, 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 bang. And we're like, what the heck? Where did we move into? We moved into a town, there's shooting going on? So I will tell you, we shortly thereafter learned about, we live near Four Corners, so there's hunting game, fish and game there, the club, and there's all shooting areas. So we've become accustomed to it. So I don't, certainly not looking to put anything in that endangers our hunters. We always laugh, and I always, tell a story when I talk about when we moved into Portland about that first weekend. So not trying to go, infringe on hunters' rights.
Thank you. Any other informal discussion tonight?
Susan, I did touch base with George Law.
Thank you.
And he said basically the papers for the land swap, he kind of just sort of slipped his mind, kind of got pushed aside, but he's going to be getting in touch probably with you or the necessary people, President Exchange Club and you, to get those papers signed to finalize the land swap.
That's wonderful.
Okay.
Thank you.
This is kind of more of a question. You might not have the answer, but as you know, I'm involved with the Connecticut River Conservancy, and so they asked me last week how things were going with our Brownstone Avenue brownfield project and the oil tanks and all. And so I think it was Jim sent me some photos of it because I hadn't been down there, and I emailed them over to them, and they were all excited to see. They had asked if the tanks were coming down, and I said, yeah, I think they are. And then I got the photos and sent them to them. and they were quite excited about progress happening there. And they asked me if it was what was going to happen with the old docks. Oh, thanks, Jim. That's the picture I sent them. They asked about, I guess there's some old docks there, and they were just curious if we were going to end up taking them out or try to reuse them. And
No.
I says, I really don't know, but I'd run it up the flagpole.
Sure.
So
There is at least one pier there that used to be where the boats would come in to offload the tankers, the oil. And that will hopefully be regenerated. It's not something we plan on removing. It gives us access, deep water access to the river. And that was certainly one of the attractions of purchasing that land. So it has not been used in many years, obviously, Rick, but it is something that we seek to preserve and use.
okay. Very good. And I don't know what their, if what their feeling is on that, if they're pro that or not. I really don't know, but I'll pass that along. I think in general, they're very much pro river access for the public, whether it's in a power boat, a non-powered boat, a swimmer, a fisherman, whatever. So
Sure.
I think the fact that, we're reclaiming that land and we can maybe someday even use the old pier there, that's good news.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
So yeah, Rick, because I remember the discussions about that, the fact that those piers there are essential because they're already in the ground. So even if they have to do major replacement of them, they're already there. So that gives an opportunity for us to maybe seek grant, funds that would help us with that. If they weren't there, it'd be much more painful to try to put the piers in, but because they're there now and can be, reestablished, that was a huge part of what at least when I heard discussions, I thought that was one of the more bigger
Yes.
benefits that we get from it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And speaking of grants, Ralph, this has just popped into my head. I learned that the Rockfall Foundation has grants available, and they mentioned we should consider applying for one of their grants for our river access project. Not the brownfield project, but this where we've been looking at other places for a kayak canoe launch site, that sort of thing. So when we get further along, and just maybe it's not for this year, but down the road, you can just keep that in the back of your minds. And their grant sizes go from between $5,000 and $10,000, and they're not huge, but that's still a nice little sum. So just thought I'd pass that along.
Right. Speaking of grants, Rick, well, the town did receive the paperwork necessary to implement the homelessness prevention grant. So that is over $300,000, and we'll be cooperating with on a regional effort to prevent homelessness or people who are on the brink of homelessness. So that's something we'll be working with some partners on throughout the region to help those in need. We're very pleased
Very good
to get that. Thank you. Anything else tonight? I have nothing on the follow-up, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Make a motion that we adjourn the meeting.
Thank you, Jim. Is there a second?
Second it.
Thank you, Rick Shar. All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries, and it is 9:15 p.m. Thank you and have a good evening, everyone.
Good night.
Everybody.
Night.